How do you know if you're ready? There are 3 questions that every advisor, consultant, or business owner needs to ask before making the leap from their current role. Listen in. Hello, welcome back to the Hello You Show. My name is Jessica Rice, and I am your host. And for those of you who don't know me very well, I'm a legacy leadership and brand strategist. I work with executives, entrepreneurs, those who are ready to take their legacy into that next level and really start making an impact. So if you've been considering how you start to make a transition from your corporate role into going forth and doing some of your greatest dreams, your bigger goals, making an impact, and you're really wondering if you're ready, is now the right time? Then I have 3 questions for you that I want you to ask yourself honestly, and then we'll dive into them a little bit deeper. So the first question is, do I know how to make money? Because this is going to be key in terms of paying your bills and survival. Do you truly know how you're going to make consistent income for yourself? Number 2 is, have you built up a network? Your network is your net worth. And when you're a business owner, it's even more crucial than even when you're a leader. And number 3 is, do I know my brand? Your brand is everything as a business owner, as a leader as well. And so we're going to dive into these 3 questions a little bit deeper so that you have some clarity on whether now is the right time or whether now is the time to start digging in and doing some of the work before you make that decision. So the first question is that's always key is, how do I make money? And I think that's probably the biggest one that's looming over every entrepreneur's mind when they're deciding to make this leap. How do we make money? When I first started to think about myself in a different perspective as an entrepreneur, the biggest question was, what is my offer? What's your offer? And do you have a proven offer? This was really difficult for me as a coach, because as a coach, I was doing corporate coaching, corporate contracts. I didn't really know what my offer was. I was receiving clients through my contract. So if you haven't created an offer for yourself, if you don't know what that looks like, shaping an offer requires doing research. It requires understanding your buyer's market, understanding your buyer's persona, all of the things that you understand inside of corporate in terms of sales strategies. But you have to understand how you are going to uniquely position yourself inside of your market, how you're going to start pitching yourself. What does that look like? And truly ask yourself, what is my market in need of? So if you're going into an advisory role, you're going to want to be pitching yourself to businesses, right? You're going to be pitching yourself to other key corporate leaders who are decision makers, whether they're running talent development or HR or heading up the IT department or organizations in the tech space. What is it that your service offers? How are you advising? I have a lot of clients who are looking into fractional roles. A few of them have already made that leap. And it's important that you're considering, how are you presenting yourself as an advisor, as an expert who can come in and help them? As a consultant, it's a very similar thing. There's a key distinction between being a consultant and being an advisor that I think a lot of people don't really understand the nuance here. Being a consultant is where you're coming in and you're working on a shorter term project, you're working on a shorter term liftoff. Maybe you're helping them to launch or accelerate. Maybe you're helping them to tighten up any loose ends or streamline their processes or button up systems. That's consulting. Advising is a longer term relationship. You're not necessarily an employee. It's very similar to fractional work. You're not necessarily an employee full time, but what you are is a trusted advisor. You come in, you mentor, you provide insights based on your expertise, based on your knowledge. And that's what moves you into fractional roles where maybe you're a part-time CTO, part-time COO, whatever that looks like, or CMO. If a startup company doesn't have the backing or the funding right now to hire a full-time C-level executive that has the knowledge and the expertise that you bring, that's where being a fractional leader can really come in and help them out. And it also gives you the flexibility to start leading in a different way, making impact in a greater way. You have flexibility to work with different companies. Maybe you're on an executive board. This is where you're moving into your legacy. You're creating a greater impact for yourself. And then if you're a business owner, maybe you want to become a founder. Maybe you want to create a startup. Maybe you want to start doing consulting or coaching or provide other services for other people. Maybe you're great in security or cybersecurity or AI or accessibility, whatever that looks like. I work with a lot of people in the tech space, so those are the references I have. Maybe you're really good in finance. You can come in and you can straighten their books out for them. When you're thinking about advising, consulting, becoming a founder, I want you to start asking yourself, how do I make money? How can I be pitching myself? How am I conveying what it is that I offer and the expertise that I bring? So the second question then becomes, do I have a network? I remember in 2019 when I first started looking into coaching, I was considering how I was going to make a move from corporate into running my own business into becoming an executive coach. And it seemed so easy. All you had to do was create a website, put a post out, and done. Now you can start making sales. Well, that was maybe true back in 2018, 2019. In 2025, that is no longer true because the market is number one saturated. Everyone thought this was a wonderful idea. We also experienced the pandemic where people were looking for alternative options to make an income and use the skill sets that they already had and expertise that they already brought. So you have to build your network. And there's a couple of key areas that I want you to consider in terms of building your network. First of all, do you understand your buyer's market? Most of us who are leaders who've made our way up in leadership and corporate understand building our network from an internal perspective, creating our brand from an internal perspective relative to our corporation. Who are the key decision makers? Who are the key players inside of our company? You have to be able to consider how you bring yourself out of there. And so number one, there's of course your warm market. Those are people that you already know and that you can be reaching out to have additional connections and leads and people that they can refer you to. So that's number one. Then you have a second tier market. The second tier market are people that you either have been referred to or maybe tangentially know based on whatever LinkedIn tells you. Is it a second tier relationship? And then you have your third tier. These are people that you are reaching out to on your own. And to be quite honest, this is the part where most business owners struggle because we don't understand sales. We haven't been taught sales. And not only that, we haven't been taught how to network in a sales capacity. And so how do we start reaching out to people that we've never met, don't know, don't even tangentially know, weren't referred to in a way where we can start to pitch our offer, pitch ourselves? Decision makers from other companies that have no idea who we are and what we stand for and what we represent. And so we have to get really comfortable and really good at learning sales and learning how to sell whatever system, whatever offer, whatever product that we have created. And I really want to differentiate here. You are not selling yourself. You are selling your brand. You're selling what your brand can offer, but you're not selling yourself. And I think there's this really subtle, nuanced distinction that a lot of people struggle with because when they're reaching out, they feel like they are representing themselves instead of representing their company. If you are creating a consultancy, an advisory, you are creating a company and you are representing your company. You are the face of your company. So it's not you. And I think it's always easier to sell a company, to sell a product or a service for someone else than it is to sell ourselves. And so you have to make that distinction for yourself as a business owner. as an advisor, as a consultant. Because it's not all about you, it's about what you can bring and how you can help this other person, this other individual. How do you move the needle for them? And this is where we move into question number 3 is, do I understand my brand? Let me make this really clear. Your branding, personal branding is the same. It equals leadership development. And this is so confusing for a lot of leaders because they look at leadership development, they look at this terminology, what is leadership development? You are building upon yourself. You are building your brand, your executive presence, your communication, your gravitas. You're also building into that your core values, your mission, your vision, what it is that you stand for. And when you have these pieces as a leader, whether you're a leader of your current role or a leader of a team or a leader of your business, of the consultancy, the advisory, the fractional brand that you are creating, you have to get very clear on what that is. Because if you're wishy-washy on what your messaging is, if you're wishy-washy in your communication, people aren't going to understand you. They're not going to understand what it is that you bring, what you offer, and you have to get very clear on what that is. And I think that's another big challenge that a lot of people face is because, number one, they're good at a lot of things. So they're multidimensional in their skills, their talents, their expertise. They can do it all. And sometimes I remember falling into this trap too. It's like, I don't really know what I want to do. I just want to be able to make some money, right? I mean, at the end of the day, like we want to be able to make an income for our families. But if we're not clear on what that looks like, how do I truly help? And what do I truly enjoy doing? How do I really enjoy serving and helping other people? Because if you can do anything, don't you want to pick the thing that you love the most? Now, in some cases, the thing we love the most may not make any income. So how do you craft that for yourself? And really start to consider, what does that look like for yourself? What does your brand represent? Because your brand is the face of your company. Your brand is what sells the service. Your brand is the messaging that you put out consistently. And when you can get clear on your brand, and the rest of these pieces can start to fall in line so that when you're building your network, you know how to communicate, you know how to message your value proposition, you know how to speak to your buyer's market, you know how to speak to their needs, their challenges, their frustrations, and what it is that they're looking to solve, which then leads you into, here's how I continue to refine my offer. Here's how I continue to refine my service. Here's how I continue to pitch my brand in a compelling way so that other corporations, other individuals, decision makers, leaders get it. So they understand what it is that I offer. At the end of the day, they have to understand what it is that you offer. So before you make any decisions on leaving corporate or leaving your present role, consider for yourself, are you already building a foundation for yourself? And this can take a little bit of time. Sometimes we do. We just want to leave and we want to start now. But the leaders who are already starting, the leaders who are putting themselves out there that you see are doing advisory, consulting, fractional roles, they already started this process a long time ago. They already started building their network. They already started understanding how to position themselves, how to pitch their brand, how to connect with other people, and what it is that they could fill. What was the gap that they could fill that other people needed? And so really consider this, how you can start building this in to your schedule. How do you start building this part into your life? And so the thing that I often don't hear or get asked is, how do I start creating a support system for myself? How do I actually start doing this? And the thing is that you have to start creating key relationships that are external to your company and external to your buyer's market, okay? And they have to be external from your friends or your personal relationships. I can't stress this enough. This way, you can have the support that you need. You have the people who can listen and understand you. and people who can bounce ideas off and give you some feedback and really help you to move the needle forward. Being a business owner, being an advisor, running a consultancy is no joke. It takes a lot of tenacity. It takes a lot of courage and grit. And there's no way that sometimes we can carry all of this alone, which is why on this show, I started talking a little bit more about faith. Because sometimes it's in those darker moments when we're questioning everything that we have to be able to lean into our faith, whatever it is that we believe in, our spiritual calling, whatever it is our connection is. And also leaning into people who get us, who can understand us. You do not want to put pressure on relationships with people who are not where you are. You cannot expect family or friends or even colleagues to understand this new journey, this path that you're on. You're putting unnecessary, undue pressure on relationships for them to put themselves into your shoes, where you currently are. The best place to do this is to find people who are like you, who have been there, who have done that, who can understand the words that you're saying. And you don't have to explain all of it. They just know. This is why we created the Powerhouse Legacy Collective. This is why we wanted to create a community of leaders, of executives, of founders who are really ready to start positioning themselves. And they don't want to put pressure on their colleagues. They don't want to put pressure on their family or their loved ones. That adds stress. And the whole idea here is that we reduce stress. You create a path, you create a roadmap, you create a strategy for yourself so that you're moving forward intentionally. We have to be deliberate with how we spend our time. We have to be deliberate with how we're moving that needle. And if you're a busy executive, you don't have time to waste and you don't have time to sit here and figure it all out on your own, tinkering with everything. So I want you to consider for yourself, who do you have in your court who can be a sounding board, who's been there, who's done that, who can provide additional support, additional feedback for you? Because as you're growing your network, your buyer's market network, you need to also be growing partnerships. You need to be growing other support systems, people who will be your greatest cheerleaders, but they're not going to be buying from you. They're not interested in what the services that you have to bring, but they are tangentially related. And you can then create partnerships. Maybe you speak together. Maybe you create other products or services together that you couldn't do apart. How are you growing this network for yourself so that it's strategic, it's tangible, it's valid, and what you're putting forth starts to grow and expand on its own? That's the goal, right? So we're putting ourselves out there, but we're growing our network. Notice how social media, I didn't mention any of that. I didn't mention how you're showing up on social media. That is a second part. That's another piece of how you can start presenting yourself, how you start building credibility, how you start putting your brand out there and positioning yourself in a greater way. But you cannot put all your eggs onto social media because social media is saturated. Social media is a glorified resume. Your LinkedIn is a glorified resume. That's where people are going to learn more about you, but it's not social media that's going to grow your brand. It's these other activities. It's understanding your offer. It's understanding your network. It's how you're building it, how you're making key partnerships, key relationships, and understanding how to communicate what you bring. And that's understanding your brand, your leadership value, all of that deeper work that leaders have to do. So leadership development, brand development, synonymous. They're one and the same. Because if you don't know yourself as a leader, if you don't know the strengths that you bring, if you don't know what you stand for, it's going to be really hard to run a company. It's going to be really hard to run a company where you have multiple clients that you're managing. So really consider, what are the key pieces that you're putting into place for yourself right now? What are the key things that you don't know yet that maybe you need some more understanding around, maybe some more knowledge, a little bit more expertise, things that you can start to practice while you're still in a role that provides a little bit of security. I am not going to tell you that the market is providing security right now, but if you're in a role that has a little bit of security, this is the best time to start building upon your brand, building upon your network, understanding what it is that you could create for yourself, practicing how you pitch, so that when you do feel ready, maybe you're already lining up clients before you transition. That's the end game. What you want is to make a smooth transition where it doesn't feel like there's a gap. It just flows from one role right into the next. And that's what I teach my clients, and that's what we work on together. If you have any questions, please reach out. For a lot of us on here, we're really considering, how do we start to package up our expertise? How do we start to package up our skills and what it is that we bring? How do I go and begin a business? And when is the right time to make a transition for myself? And how do I start positioning this in the market? And if you really have some of those questions and you want a support system and you want to know how to do this to a greater extent and have a community that can back you up, I invite you to come join us at the Powerhouse Legacy Collective. Inside, there is support, there are playbooks, there are trainings and resources to help you understand, number one, your natural strengths, who you are, how you represent yourself, and how you start building something that is tangible and builds upon your legacy so that you can create an impact in this world. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you have questions, please reach out. You find me on LinkedIn. I'm there. I would love to speak with you and hear about what some of your goals are. You can also find me at jessicaricecoaching.com. Join us again next week as we have another amazing episode diving into more strategies on how you can start to position yourself in the market, start saying hello to who you are and what you stand for and what you bring, and continue to stay bold and stay brave. Talk then. Thank you for tuning in to the Hello You Show. It's been a pleasure to have you with us on this journey today. If you found value in our conversation and want to support the show, please take a moment to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd also deeply appreciate it if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also enables others seeking inspiration and authenticity to discover our community. Until next time, keep embracing your story with purpose.